And I figured a lot of those screens have 2 people at least. So it's good. It'll be more before we're done. So tomorrow we have a field trip to the Cienega Trail at City of Rock State Park. You meet at 9 o'clock. We've done 2 other field trips here at the City of Rocks, and this one will get us into the Cienega, which will be lower and have some, where's the Cienega, and a whole new group of plants for us. On the 23rd is Gila Earth Day in Goff Park. We'll have a table. We'll be doing some activities with kids, some painting and such, and we'll be selling some of our books. So, and we could use a few more volunteers. So April 30th, field trip to Pitchfork Ranch. That was one that we had to cancel a couple of years ago because of COVID. This is a wonderful Cienega restoration project with AT and Lucinda Cole. It's going to be fantastic. So you're all welcome to attend. Give Grandly is a wonderful thing that we have here in the Gila region and beyond that really gets folks to contribute money to 50 or more nonprofits. And so if your favorite nonprofit is worthy of some money, so please give grandly. For members of Audubon and the Gila Native Plant Society, we're going to do a joint picnic. It's been a couple of years since we were able to do that. And even if you're not a member, you can come, just bring your own plate and silverware and cup, and we'll and a dish to share. And then Russ Kleinman will do a program on May 20th on the most beautiful flowers in the world, the penstemons. And so that would be really good. So I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to introduce Dara. So Dara, why don't you go ahead and screen share while I introduce you. Dara Saville is an author, herbalist, geographer, and native plant advocate. She's a board member of the Albuquerque Chapter of the Native Plant Society of New Mexico, the founder of Albuquerque Herbalism, an herbal studies program, and the executive director of the Yerba Mansa Project, which focuses on environmental education and native plant restoration in the Bosque. That sounds like she's also a PhD candidate. So Dara's life is busy. Please welcome Dara Saville.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Don, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm very grateful to share this Friday evening with all of you and to share this love of our native plants together. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. There's always lots to talk about and never enough time. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right into this program. And I wanted to just start off in case some folks here aren't too familiar with a botanical medicine practice or an herbalism practice, just to say a few words about that in general. I am an herbalist amongst many other things, and I've been practicing here in central New Mexico for 2 decades, and there's a lot of ways that we gather and acquire and apply this kind of knowledge, and there's a lot of ways to learn about native plants, and I'm sure however you engage with native plants, you already understand that. But in the herbal context or the botanical medicine context, there are a lot of ways that we learn about this practice. And one of those ways is by talking about phytochemistry and about how plant constituents can provoke physiological responses in the body. And so that's one way of talking about botanical medicine. We also gather knowledge about this through historical practices, or going back as, quite far. I mean, you have evidence of humans conducting botanical medicine practices 65,000 years ago in Neanderthal times. And so this has been going on for a very long time. And through various interdisciplinary practices, we're able to piece together the ways that humans have been working with plants for health and well-being for thousands of years. And so we also have more recent ethnobotanical texts that where we have collected some bits and pieces of information from many different cultural groups around the world, and those are often fragmented and sometimes decontextualized, and just bits and pieces of information that we try to put together to expand our understanding of these plants and how they work in the health and healing context. And then, of course, there are practitioners of these living traditions today who are helping us to continue building this knowledge through what we might call a clinical practice or a consultation practice or some sort of healthcare practice. There's lots of different ways of practicing and lots of different words to describe it. And then, what I would really like to focus on tonight is this other way of learning, and adding to all of this knowledge is learning directly from the plants themselves. I think most of us here, or probably all of us here, do spend a lot of time with native plants, and we understand the power of observation, the power of relationships with these plants. And that's really what I would like to talk a little bit more about tonight. And for anyone who turns out to be a little disappointed if I don't incorporate enough of the science into this, I will encourage you to take a look at my book, The Ecology of Herbal Medicine, which was published by the University of New Mexico Press last year. And there's a very hefty bibliography in the back of that, and the book is very thoroughly cited throughout. And so if any of these concepts really intrigue you, all of that research is included in the book, and it's there and available for everyone to pursue whatever portions of this seem the most interesting to you. So let's go ahead and talk about, I picked a few of my favorite plants. This is always a very agonizing process for me. I promise you, I always feel bad about not including certain plants in every discussion, but it was hard enough for my book. I narrowed it down to only 39 plants there, and tonight I've narrowed it down to 4. So these are just a few of my favorites, but there are many others. It's kind of like, just what are my favorite plants that could change from day to day. But these are some that have given a lot to me over the long term, some plants that I am extremely grateful for the opportunity to have relationships with these plants. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about that here tonight. And so I want to start off with juniper, which is one of the most common plants of our region. And I think one, perhaps because of its commonality, maybe we take it for granted, don't really fully appreciate it the way we could. And I know that I didn't, pay it full attention for a while. And I guess because it's everywhere, maybe you think it's not so special. But in reality, I think this is one of the plants that can define our region ecologically and culturally. And juniper is a plant that you can find in a variety of different habitat types. In fact, there are species of juniper around the world. And so there's a ton of research and cultural information about this plant in many different contexts. And what to me is always so amazing is the uniqueness of each of those stories, but also the commonality of those stories. And juniper provides a lot ecologically. There are quite a number of plant species which are known to be specific to juniper pinon woodland habitats, and so they create a unique a unique habitat that supports biodiversity. And as a botanical medicine, this is also an extremely important plant to people of our region, but also to people around the world. And there are many different species which are generally used or worked with interchangeably for botanical medicine purposes, largely accepting the alligator juniper, the Juniperus stepiana, which is somewhat distinct in that way. Although I think is the most beautiful of all the species. In any case, juniper greens and berries are used somewhat differently. So I'll differentiate between those in this talk. But as a plant in general, juniper has a long-standing association with times of great transformation in human lives, and has been called upon to facilitate those transformations. Juniper throughout time and space, throughout cultures around the world, has been used to facilitate birth and death and times of great upheaval and navigating any kind of life circumstance that really needs a sense of safety and protection and some courage. And juniper is associated with all of those things. And we wonder why, why would a plant be associated with birth and death and transitions? But, when we take a look at it on a more practical level, it has all of the characteristics we need. And plants have this way of showing us how to be in the world, how to be in place, how to navigate transitions in our lives. In this case, just how to live our lives and be better people. And juniper is certainly no exception to that. As a botanical medicine, it is antimicrobial and has a relaxant effect on the physical body. When we relax the physical body, of course, we're removing barriers to, all the things like blood flow and oxygen and nutrient delivery and waste removal. And so we have a better flow. And flow is where vitality happens. And so it is also, in addition to being antimicrobial and relaxant to the musculature and physical body, it's also extremely aromatic and resinous. And so those are also medicinal qualities. And aromatic plants in general have a very dispersing type of quality, which you may really appreciate the next time you are severely congested. And so these plants are oftentimes used for respiratory opening, but decongesting can happen in the physical body too when you have that stagnancy, not just in your lungs, but also when your body feels stiff, that relaxant quality can help. And so all of these aspects that I have mentioned here tend to be associated more with the greenery of this plant. And so, branches have been burned. Modern herbalists might make these into tinctures, which are an extraction into a combination of alcohol and water, can be made as a tea. Sometimes people will bathe in these herbs. So many different modes of delivery. You can infuse this also into oil and make topical remedies out of it. So a lot of things that you can do, and juniper is therefore thought of as a protector, a safeguarding plant that allows for people to undertake these major transitions, such as giving birth. You need to be relaxed and have flowing movement, and the antimicrobial aspect is also helpful in that context. Same thing with death and dying is about moving and transforming and letting go and feeling safe and protected in doing that. And so juniper has all of these contexts. And you know, I feel the message of juniper really is already apparent in what I've said. You know, I feel human beings as a collective are undergoing a great transformation today, and you know, as a species, we are confronting some major issues that require us to really think about transforming ourselves in ways that might make us feel vulnerable and uncomfortable. And so I like to discuss juniper in that way, as well as really kind of safeguarding us and inviting us into a new way of being collectively as a species on this planet, and to embody, you know, what juniper is practicing every single day in its landscape. What, you know, as botanical medicine practitioner, I'm always thinking, what work are plants doing every day in their lives, in their natural habitats, and what can I learn from that? And juniper is a very resilient plant. It's extremely drought tolerant, can store a lot of carbon, and withstand a lot more heat and dryness and drought, and is more resilient in the face of rising temperatures than many other plants, including its common companion, the pinon pine. And so this lesson of resiliency and transformation in a time of change is really, to me, quite obvious. And so there are many ways of medicine we could talk about, you know, using this to treat congestion, or the berries, which we didn't mention, which are commonly used for digestive issues and urinary tract issues. You know, we can invite this plant into our lives in very concrete ways, but also as a teacher, as a way to be in this land, this land of enduring drought, which isn't even the right word anymore. But juniper is really embodying those lessons of resiliency in its landscape every day. And so that's another form of less tangible medicine, these lessons that plants can teach us. So let's move along and talk about some others. And here's just a quick snapshot of me processing some juniper, preparing to make juniper oil, which is one of my favorite herbal remedies, drying the greens just briefly and chopping them up, and removing the stems and preparing to put them in a canning jar and with some oil, and making that herbal remedy. Here's another plant that has really stolen my heart, the globemallow. There are many Sphaeralcea species around, but this is a plant that really invited me into the botanical world a long time ago by you know, just ensnaring my heart in a way that was, you know, permanently altering. Falling in love really hard is something you never recover from, and I'm happy about that. So globemallow is another plant that is really associated with our region. Of course, the Sphaeralcea coccinea is one species that is wider ranging across the western states and plain states, but many of the other species of this genus are more specific to our southwestern region. And that is because this plant really likes hot, dry conditions and disturbed soils. And we sure do have plenty of that around here. So that's why we see a lot more of these species in our area. And here's another photo showing the coccinea species, which I just mentioned, and some of the leggier varieties like the angustifolia species here on the left. They're all just as gorgeous as can be. And these, as I mentioned, like to grow in these very hot, dry, disturbed environments. And once again, you know, if we really want to learn about botanical medicine, we have many ways of doing that, but going directly to the source and learning from these plants themselves and what lessons they have to offer is a very potent way of relating and forming relationships with these plants, and learning not only about the botanical medicine, but the deeper lessons of place and relationship that they have to offer. This plant growing in these kinds of habitats with hot, dry disturbed soil is something that is offering a lesson through ecological practices every day that this plant is engaging in. It is an antidote really to those kinds of environmental conditions. And we are not separate from our environment. I think hopefully most of the people in this group have let go of that fallacy a long time ago. We are sharing the same air, breathing oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange with plants. We are, of course, engaged in a water exchange constantly. The water inside our bodies and the water and the environment is the same. And so we are very fluid with our environment, and the balance between the exogenous and endogenous ecosystems is something we really hope to have in equilibrium when our world is out of balance environmentally. We of course are part of that equation, and we experience that. And there's no no mistake that chronic inflammatory conditions for human health have been rising in recent decades, just as the world has been becoming more inflamed ecologically. And globemallow kind of being on the forefront of that, both in the landscape and as a botanical medicine, is an easy connection to make. Globemallow leaves and flowers and roots are all medicinal, and they are working in the landscape every day, kind of balancing out that heat and dryness and disturbance in the landscape by holding down soil and stabilizing those environments. Also, this is a very demulcent plant, which means it has characteristics of cooling and moistening. And when you consume this plant as a botanical medicine, you feel those cooling, moistening effects in your soft tissue. And as desert dwelling people, it's a very welcome herbal action, which helps to balance us in our environments. And globemallow is doing that environmentally as well. And so there's a lesson here as well, just as juniper is offering us this lesson of resilience in a time of upheaval and change. Globemallow is doing its work in the world of creating balance and equilibrium in a time of disequilibrium and in places that are out of balance. And so this is a plant that in botanical medicine practices is used to restore balance in the human body, and is commonly used for a variety of things. That cooling and moistening of the soft tissues is very helpful for a dry cough and sore throat, for example, but also very effective for helping to treat autoimmune imbalances of the immune system. And those can be triggered by a variety of different things, but they are essentially an imbalance in the body as well. And globemallow is always seeking that to restore balance where it has been knocked off. And so we see that happening environmentally, and as its ecosystem role, or one of many of its ecosystem contributions, but making those same contributions to our ecosystems as a botanical medicine as well. And this is one of the most important herbs, I think, in the Southwestern apothecary because of this ability to help restore balance. And many of us are out of balance in a variety of ways. And of course, we know now that autoimmune disorders, the number of them has been, just growing exponentially over the years. We have examples of autoimmune imbalances in every single body system. And globemallow is very efficient at helping to make those imbalances less severe and more manageable in daily life. And so, none of these herbs are going to provide miraculous cure-all solutions to our problems, but they do help bring us back to the middle. And they also are offering us these lessons of how to live in this land, how to be in this place and be in balance in this place. And I love globemallow for offering us that wisdom. Of course, most of us here know that, these plants have been here a lot longer than humans have. And so they know a lot more about living in this place than we do. And so if we open ourselves up to be receptive to medicine on many different levels, then there's a lot that plants are offering us. I hope, just for all of us to be able to receive a little bit more openness to that. Moving along here, here's another plant called Pedicularis. Some of the common names are betony or lousewort, and there are a variety of Pedicularis species. I sometimes like to talk about this plant in a same talk where I'm talking about juniper, because I think in the herbal medicine world, this genus Pedicularis has a lot of strong allure. It's an extremely beautiful plant, and people are very attracted to it. And for people who live in the Rocky Mountain habitats, there's a variety of species that have some pretty substantial populations. But if you live outside of that region, then you don't have as much of this, or you might not have any of this. And but the allure is still there. And I think in my experience as an herbalist, I find a lot of people are very attracted to plants that are unusual or beautiful and sometimes rare. And not that this is a rare plant, but in some regions it is. And yet people are still very attracted to using it. And so I think it's always worth discussing in combination with juniper, because they do have some overlapping botanical medicine applications, to remind people that a plant, we may be very attracted to a plant for whatever reason, but if it's not abundant where we live, then we should probably not be working with it. In fact, we definitely shouldn't be working with it. And juniper is so wide ranging, so abundant, and overlaps with Pedicularis as a muscle relaxant remedy. And so I teach people about that, sustainable practices and being caretakers and advocates of our native plants, and that working with plants that are not abundant in our region makes bad medicine, because it is not good for the plants. Our number one role as herbalists is to advocate for plants and their habitats. Without them, we don't have any life, and we don't have any practice. And above all else, their right to exist in the world is the most important part of botanical medicine practice. So there's a lesson right off the bat here with Pedicularis about sustainable practice, especially because this is one that really cannot be cultivated because of its hemiparasitic nature and the complex interactions this plant is engaging with other plant species underground. For anyone who's not familiar with the term hemiparasitic, it just means that this plant is known to take alkaloids and other resources from other plants, though it is not necessary for its survival, but it does do that. And that is part of the medicine of this plant. So here, these snapshots are Pedicularis perii up in a high alpine meadow in the San Juan Mountains, where I prepared a fresh tincture from a very abundant stand of this particular species. And then, if you are not familiar with the insane beauty of Pedicularis, and I might have to challenge the penstemon as the most beautiful plant. I don't know what people think about that. Maybe we could have a survey at the end of this, but penstemon has a hardy challenger here in Pedicularis. I personally think this is one of the most beautiful genera of plants I've ever encountered. The variety, the large number of species globally, and the incredible allure of these plants is pretty outrageous. Here are a few of the species that I have worked with, which I typically go up to Colorado to harvest these, where there are much larger stands of these plants, but there's Pedicularis groenlandica, racemosa, bracteosa, perii, and also Procera which is the largest of all these species, and therefore, in my mind, the best one to work with, because, you know, just a few leaves or a couple of flowering stalks might be all you need there. And then the little Pedicularis centranthera there at the top, which is the one that likes a little bit lower, hotter, drier elevations. And most of these others are higher elevation species. And so that's why they're not so common in New Mexico until you get up to the Rocky Mountain habitats. But in any case, you know, this is a muscle relaxing botanical medicine, and leaves and flowers are harvested for that purpose. And they are prepared in a variety of ways for internal and topical use. And as I mentioned, if this is not common in your area, then go with juniper by all means. It's going to give you muscle relaxation, and also that incredible aroma of juniper, which is something I really enjoy as well. So there are other forms of medicine, though, as I mentioned, and this is another plant that has a lot of ecological lessons for us as people. That hemiparasitic activity underground is key here to this conversation. This plant is doing a lot of work underground where we cannot see all of its workings, but we know they're happening. And we know that this plant is interacting with a multitude of other genera, lots of different species it may have as hosts. And typically this plant will choose a host plant that is a very successful member in the local ecology, a plant that is very prolific and sometimes perhaps one of the largest botanical members of that community. And so it is taking from abundance and reallocating those resources to the entire community. And so it is kind of spreading that wealth in a way where you can see these incredible flowers. It's using these resources that it's taking to make these gorgeous nectar and pollen-rich flowers and attract a lot of pollinators into the area. And scientific studies have shown us that where Pedicularis grows abundantly, biodiversity, botanical diversity is increased because of all of this pollinator activity that it summons into the area. Other species have been shown to produce more fruits and set more seeds when they're growing in association with a Pedicularis species. And so, you know, this is also a very important lesson for people today. Plants are teaching us how to be in this world, how to be better community contributors and better collaborators. And collaboration is what we really need to make progress on these big problems that we're facing here today. And Pedicularis is a living example of successful interspecies collaboration for the good of the community. And that is a lesson I have learned from this plant, and a lesson that I try to embody in my work, especially as the director of a nonprofit, which is volunteer driven. I hope to harness all of the best parts of my community and put them together for the good of everyone, humans and non-humans alike, and to celebrate that successful collaboration and all of the goodness we're able to create by working together successfully. And that is something I have directly learned from Pedicularis and put into action in my life. And I hope that that medicine is something that transcends the common ways we discuss botanical medicine of, you know, this plant to treat that kind of ailment. Some medicine can never be put into a bottle or a jar. It's just medicine that we live every day. And so that's an example of Pedicularis providing that kind of lesson for us. Here is cottonwood. This is another plant that has really shaped my life and my work. And I have a lot of gratitude for the relationship that I have with this plant. We all know cottonwoods. They, again, a plant, the Populus genus has many species around the world, common in riparian areas globally, some kind of Populus species. And this is a plant, I think, I live in the Rio Grande Valley on the floodplain. And as the director of the Yerba Mansa Project, we actively engage in the floodplain and bring our community in to engage there as well in health and healing. And although, we named the project after Yerba Mansa because it is a wetlands plant with a very threatened habitat and a legendary botanical medicine for our region, and an important ecosystem contributor. Really that project, I think, was heavily inspired by the cottonwoods. I walked in that place for many years, and the more I learned about what was happening there ecologically, the more saddened my heart felt. I couldn't get out of my head, and I became more aware of what we were losing and what was dying and changing around me. And I thought, well, I cannot let this despair settle in and become my association with this place. And the cottonwoods, the call of the cottonwood was very strong that day. And I will never forget that day of thinking, if the cottonwoods are senescing here and they are dying off en masse, and we must take up the work of the cottonwoods. The cottonwoods have nourished life in the Rio Grande Valley for at least 2 million years. We know from the fossil record, probably longer. They provide the structure of the forest. They provide shade. They provide leaf litter mulch to cool the roots of other plants and help them conserve water, and provide habitat for tiny forest recycling creatures and small mammals. There are porcupines living in the branches and fungal species growing on the bark, and they have provided food, medicine, and material culture for humans for as long as we've been here. And they've done all of that for so long. Let us take up the work of nurturing life in our valley on their behalf. If we cannot sustain their lives by better water management, then we must at least pick up the work that they have been doing. And that was essentially how the Yerba Mansa Project got started. I was determined to honor the cottonwoods in that way, by bringing my community into the Bosque to do the work of nurturing life and helping native plants to maintain some existence in that ecosystem into a hotter, drier future. And so that is a little bit about how cottonwood has inspired me and taught me about the work I needed to be doing. And I'm very grateful for the honor bestowed upon me to be an advocate for these plants and to share a little bit of their story, a little bit of the story that I'm able to understand, at least. And so cottonwoods as a botanical medicine have been used in a variety of ways. Leaves and bark are used, but really the best part are the cottonwood buds, which we've up here in Albuquerque, at least, we have just recently passed the time for harvesting these. The catkins and the leaves are bursting out now, just getting started doing that. But late winter is the time for harvesting these, and you can see that they're covered with resin, which they do to help protect themselves from herbivory and insects and things like that. All of these botanical medicine compounds that plants produce, it's not like they're making it for us. Of course, they're making it for themselves and for their community, and to create wellness in the world. And since we are part of this living biological system, it's also medicine for us. Happens to be that way. We're pretty lucky. But when we collect these buds in a very resinous state, like you see here, one of the most amazing things we can do is infuse them into oil. And here you see me doing that. There are many methods for this, which you might choose different methods depending on the plant, but something that is very resinous like this does better when some very gentle heat is applied. So here I am giving these cottonwood buds in oil, a little warm water bath in a crock pot, which I do for several days. And then straining those buds out, you have an oil that is heavy with resin inside the oil. And you can use that as a massage oil, which is fantastic. You can further process it into things like salves and creams, for example. But this medicine, this nurturance of cottonwoods is present not only in its ecological functioning as I described, but also it does the same thing out in the world as it does inside of our bodies medicinally. It is nurturing to us as well. It is very high in salicin. The whole Sphaeralcea family, the whole willow family is high in these salicin compounds, which were isolated by pharmacists to create aspirin. So these compounds are very anti-inflammatory and pain relieving through that method. They're also very good antimicrobial. So used in things like treating arthritis and bodily aches and pains, fever reducing, wound care, and the like. And so this oil is excellent for all of those things, and for nurturing us as humans, as a contributing species to this world. And so I hope that this talk tonight has helped to illuminate, the fun of botanical medicine, the beauty in knowing plants and having relationships with them and understanding their lives, and the lessons that they have to teach us about living in this land and being better contributors to the process of life and caretaking plants and their habitats. And above all else, this ever important interconnection between land health and human health. Anyone who still is holding on to the fallacy of the disconnect of those things is living in another world. This picture here is a jetty jack with the word heal written on it in the Bosque. And it's, to me, a beautiful example of impromptu land art that expresses this concept of the interconnectivity of land health and human health. As we degrade our environment and deplete its resiliency, we are doing that to our own health and vitality. And every act we take of restoration and nurturance comes back to us as well, because of course we are deeply interconnected in this web of life and well-being. And all of these plants we've talked about today, juniper showing us an example of resiliency in times of desperate change, and globemallow providing an example of creating balance in a time of disequilibrium, or Pedicularis showing us a way to collaborate with others cross species for the betterment of our entire community. And then, of course, the nurturing of cottonwoods throughout the millions of years. These are all lessons I have taken to heart, and am appreciative of the opportunity to speak on these plants' behalf and to share this little portion of the stories that I have heard from them. And I hope that they will resonate throughout the community for the benefit of these plants and their habitats, and for us and the shared habitat that we all are living in here together. And so that for me is what being a botanical medicine practitioner is all about. And if you thought this was fun and would like to connect with me in other ways, here are places you can find me, my websites and my email. And I hope that this was fun enough that people have some questions popping up in their mind. And I would absolutely love to hear what your questions might be.
Okay, Dara, thank you very much. That was wonderful. And thank you for helping us to ground us again in the natural world. There's so many problems in this world today, and I won't mention all of them. But anyway, it's really nice. And I like the mix of, the science, the medicinal properties of these plants, the ecological benefits of these plants is it's really it's a very nice mix.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so one of the questions that I have, and Wendy and I have been doing some meditation, kind of funny online meditation a couple times a week, in addition to other times on our own. And I was hiking with a gal the other day. She was saying, many of us have these allergies to the Juniperus pollen, and it seems like it's a banner year here in the Gila. And she said that, well, actually, our teacher for these sessions eats a juniper berry a day, and says that helps. So for those of us that suffer with wish we could scratch our eyeballs harder, help. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, that is a question that comes up a lot, especially at this time of year when all that suffering is fresh on everyone's mind. I like to tell the story of one herbalism student who in our advanced program, the students have to create original formulations and bring them to the group for critical analysis and feedback. And one of the students suffered very heartily with juniper allergies and was determined to make some progress on that for herself. And this is a sample of one, so not a strong scientific study, but the results were significant enough to share. What she did was not eating juniper berries, but and this was before the pandemic. She went out there in a full suit and mask and collected juniper pollen in a jar, and she actually tinctured that. And tincture is an extract into a combination of alcohol and water, because plant constituents can extract into different substances, and many of them extract into alcohol and water, and so you can get both of them in one extraction that way. And she extracted the juniper pollen into that, and was able to drop dose herself with that extraction, which she did over months to gradually sensitize herself. And that was something that she had profound benefits from, significantly improving her allergy response. So she's just one single person doing that, but I always share her story because I think, it's worth anyone experimenting with who wants to engage in self-experimentation. But people who suffer from allergies are willing to try lots of things. But I will also say that, that extreme wetness, there are many drying plants that can be useful. Goldenrod is one that I commonly will use for that, because it is pretty drying, and it's just a temporary solution for a symptom, but it can help people regain their sanity momentarily, at least.
Excellent. So folks, you heard it here first. So Chris wants to know, you mentioned several times you're making extracting and using oils. Is there a particular oil, or do you use a variety of oils in your medicinals?
So I'm really big on herbal oils. I love topical herbal remedies. And as a desert dwelling person, I can say the Egyptians definitely had one thing right. They were using a lot of botanical oils to survive in their dry habitat. And I go to that too. I think it's a great, safe way to deploy herbal medicine. It's a very pleasurable way. Most people really enjoy having that rubbed onto their bodies. And I use a lot of them in my personal practice and my professional life as well. And I think that many oils could be used. There are many different cosmetic oils and culinary oils that can be used. And so I would say choose whatever you like or whatever you already have around. But my personal favorites, the ones I like to use are avocado oil. I absolutely love even eating avocado. So the idea of rubbing that on myself is very appealing. But avocado oil is really nourishing to the skin. So it's actually great as a topical, as well as a cooking oil. And I also like olive oil, which is the classic herbal extraction oil. The downside to that is it can leave a little bit of a greasy feeling because it doesn't absorb as fast as some of the other oils. And so I do like to use it, but I will oftentimes mix it with other oils to counteract that. I also like grapeseed oil, which is also very nourishing to the skin and gives kind of a soft, silky texture to products made with it. And I really like that. And then the last one that I sometimes use to a lesser degree is coconut oil, which has some anti-inflammatory properties on its own, but not everyone likes coconut oil. And it has a strong smell of its own. So I don't like to use it with aromatic plants, but those are the ones I like. But, you know, you could use many, many others too. I don't want to limit people to those. And it depends on your skin type and, you know, who you're helping and what your motivations are. And, you know, sometimes people will also eat those oils internally. And so you want to, you know, if you think you might want to do that, then you want to make sure you're choosing something that is also edible as well.
Thank you. So Betty and Dennis want to know, what are some of the restoration efforts in the Yerba Mansa Project?
Oh, I love that. Well, you know, we're having our next community Bosque restoration field day on May 7th. We do that 2 times a year. We do it every year in May and September. And that's just one of our participatory community project where we invite the whole community, all ages, everyone is welcome to come. And we do reseeding and replanting, and we do a lot of habitat improvements, mainly removing the non-native invasive Ravenna grass. I do a lot of presentations on this as well, and we have now removed over 2,500 Ravenna grass plants, and that's having missed 2 years with the pandemic. We also do a lot of educational programs. Almost everything we do is free for the community, grant supported. We work with school classrooms, having them do botanical research projects, and we bring them into the Bosque for field learning directly in the Bosque, doing plant walks and natural and cultural history talks and art and ecology projects. So we align with a lot of different curriculum objectives of school classroom teachers doing these programs, including we have bus transportation grants for schools who can't afford that as well. And we also do a lot of free programs for the general public, teaching them about the importance of healthy native plant communities in the Bosque and the importance of looking after plant species that are at risk with depletive economic land and water use and climate change effects. And the other thing that we do is we collect a lot of geographic data. I have a background in geography and, worked as a GIS specialist for the National Park Service for many years. And we have a full GIS team, and we've been collecting a lot of data on plant species to help with conservation initiatives. We just were the recipient of the Native Plant Society grant this year to expand our data collection to do baseline inventories for Yerba Mansa populations in our area so that we can engage in long-term monitoring of a highly water sensitive plant so that we can see what our economic water use and as it converges with climate change, what it's doing to that particular species in our area. So those are the kinds of things that we do. It's a lot of fun. And if anybody happens to come up to the Albuquerque area when we're having some events, I welcome you to do it. And we also do some online events, of course, as well nowadays.
Great. Dara, there are a lot of thank yous and, oh my gosh, what a great talk. But here's, how did you first become interested in the healing properties of plants?
Well, I did not grow up with this. It's not like, my parents took me camping or hiking or anything like that. I came to this as an adult, and there were a number of pivotal moments, but I think the originating one was I went on a backpacking trip, in my early 20s. Maybe I was like 20 years old, probably around that age. And my first backpacking trip was in the Tetons. And I remember a moment of standing in this incredibly beautiful mountain environment. And I just was overwhelmed by the potency of my sensory experience. I had never really spent time in natural environments, and so for me, this was incredibly life-changing and eye-opening to stand there and to feel the spray of a rushing mountain stream and the cool wetness of that, and to smell conifer trees, and to feel the living vibration and interactions of all these living entities of place. It just created this new reality of life, of what felt like real life that I had never experienced before. This whole new world opened to me, and I felt like I was a part of it, and I wanted to be a part of it, and I never wanted to leave it. And I knew in that moment that it was life-changing, and that it was going to shape the entire rest of my life, and it has. And then I met an amazing mentor in the University of New Mexico geography department who taught me about the importance of connecting to place. And for me, I did that through plants. Plants are my connection to place. So, I gave many stories today about how they teach me how to be in this place, how to be a meaningful contributor, and to be healthy and vibrant in this place, and to create vibrancy in everything I do. And I'm just so grateful for those experiences, and for the openness that I had to receive them. And so that's just one story that I could share, that I think was the beginning of it all, really, that allowed me to open myself to seeing the world in a very different way, and experiencing it in a way that really lifted me up and empowered me to engage in this work of creating health in my community.
Very good. So it's sort of, think about your exuberance and your enthusiasm. It's, a new experience for you in the Grand Tetons. And then followed up by maybe some instructors and mentors that helped you. That's great. Okay, we're going to get scientific here. What kinds of compounds do the hemiparasitic Pedicularis plants borrow?
Well, interestingly, we have a number of studies that have been done on that. And if you really want to get into the details, I kind of went off on that in my book. And because, I was really excited about that topic myself. And so all of those references are in my book if you do want to look them up. But they take a variety of different alkaloids. Some of them are medicinal compounds, and some of them are toxic compounds. And so, I do like to scare the students a little bit. I think it's healthy to put a little bit of concern when it comes to wild harvesting, and really knowing your botany and plant identification skills are really important. I mean, being a good herbalist is a very interdisciplinary practice. You cannot be out there harvesting any plants without knowing a lot about a lot of different things, including not only being able to, identify Pedicularis, but being able to identify all of the plants growing around it is also critical, because, if it has a host plant, like some of the Senecio species, it could be pulling toxic alkaloids from them. But it can also be, like ideal would be to find this in an aspen stand, which is a wonderful medicinal tree, adding medicinal compounds to this. So there are an array of them, and I couldn't list the specific compounds. Phytochemistry isn't my specialty. I learn as much of it as I can, primarily for the purposes of creating potent plant extractions, because we do need to know a little bit about what chemicals are best going to extract into which kinds of substances, and what chemicals are in plants that we want to extract. So I learn as much as I can for those purposes, but the details of that are in my book, and would encourage you to look that up if you want to know more than what I can recall at the moment.
Excellent. So take home, get the book.
Yeah.
So Seelan, very thought-provoking presentation. Thank you. Susan, thank you, Dara, for sharing your knowledge and enthusiasm. There's so much to learn and understand about all plants, but especially to get acquainted with those that will benefit our health and well-being. You're helping to educate people how to appreciate plants is so important today.
Thank you.
And Chris says, any thoughts on CBD?
Well, that's like a really big can of worms. I think that cannabis is a really good botanical medicine, and for me, it fits into this whole paradigm of plant medicine. CBD, I'm not really big on isolated compounds like that. For me, I'm a whole plant medicine kind of person, because I like having the balancing compounds. One compound that's isolated is more prone to having side effects, and it doesn't do the full array of things that a whole plant medicine can do. So CBD is good, but a whole plant medicine is better in my view. And so CBD interacting with all of the different cannabinoids and different chemicals that are present in cannabis plants as a whole plant medicine is more effective than isolated CBD. So that would be one comment I would have. Isolated CBD may be okay for people who are going to get tested for THC at their work or something, but it's not as good a medicine as the whole plant medicine. But cannabis in general, I think, is one of our best antispasmodic herbs. And an antispasmodic herb is an herb that calms twitching and spasming in the body, which helps with coughing, helps with inflammatory conditions of a variety of types, really helpful for pain. And many of the cannabinoids present in cannabis can really help to rebalance systems as a balancer, similar, doing some of the similar things that we talked about with globemallow. So I think there's, I'm happy we're living in a time kind of like getting over the stigma of that plant, but I would really encourage people whenever possible to use whole plant medicines rather than isolates like CBD.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Kylie, I think Kylie may have been a plant in the audience, but she says, thank you so much, Dara. So inspirational as always. And then Les.
I just want to give a shout out to Kylie, who is one of our critical volunteers on the Yerba Mansa Project. One of the other community services that the Yerba Mansa Project has done is to create the Plants of the Middle Rio Grande Bosque Field Guide on iNaturalist, which is a freely available resource for everyone. And Kylie is one of the editors of that, because it has been created by our community's kids. And of course, we've had to fact check and do quality control on the information included in there. And so Kylie has worked very hard to help to create that resource for the community.
Thank you. We'll you do so much and you're so inspirational. And I've known you for so many years and it's just the same. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Kylie. Definitely a huge thank you for a great program, very informative from Les. Okay, how do we get information about classes, your school?
Oh, the first website there that you can see on my screen share, albuquerqueherbalism.com, is my herbalism school. And if you want to find out about the Yerba Mansa Project, the next website, yerbamanssaproject.org, will take you there. And the darasaville.com is more about my book and me, as an author and writer. I will just say our herb school's been around for a while, and after 25 consecutive semesters, for the first time ever, I'm taking the fall semester off to focus on my PhD work, but we'll be back in the spring, and I already have the next semester courses starting for January are posted up there right now.
Excellent, very good. Well, Dara, we look forward to meeting you at the state conference in Albuquerque.
Yes, if you had some fun, I'll be giving a talk at the state conference. I'll also be leading a field trip, and I'll be doing a hands-on workshop with botanical medicine, and only 10 people get come. So you better sign up early, and it'll be super fun to meet some of you in person at any of those.
That's right. So I would just encourage all of you who are interested in the state conference, the Native Plant Society of New Mexico State Conference in Albuquerque this year, to get signed up quickly, because those field trips, some take 10, some take 20, some take 15. So you really need to get going early on that. Dara, thank you so much. That was a very enlightening and wonderful program. And I'm sure that you'll have some contacts from our viewers.
I'll love it. And I'll look forward to hopefully meeting many of you in Albuquerque in August for our conference. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. It was really a pleasure. I enjoyed your conference several years ago. So once again, I'm really grateful to be able to contribute something back to your group. Thank you.
Yeah, and just one last thing, we have the Silver Creek Botanical Garden. You just mentioned that you were at our conference a few years ago, and the healing garden, the medicinal garden, was just getting going, and Nava has done an unbelievably great job, and you won't believe what it looks like now. It's such a nice space. So.
Well, I will be down to Silver City one of these days, and I will make sure I check it out and spread some love through that garden. Thank you for taking care of that garden and helping to create such a beautiful space in your community. That's really, really beautiful.
So when you come, you make sure that you contact us.
I definitely will. My PhD program is a joint program between UNM and NMSU. That's what I was doing down in Las Cruces today. So okay. I'll be down in your area a little bit more often.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
We stop the recording right now before anybody.